All right, stand by. 10 seconds.
Ready, camera,
Count.
Ready, camera.
3, 2, 1.
Roll for record.
It's a death match at the Garden, the drug lord versus the Donald. I'm John Phillips, and this is The Rundown. Yes, Mexican drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, how's that for a pronunciation, has escaped again from what had been described as the most secure prison in Mexico by riding a motorcycle, Evel Knievel style, on rails through a mile-long tunnel equipped with lights, ventilation that went from his prison shower to a house under construction outside the walls. I wonder how many dumpy prison guard workers he had to romance to get that kind of prison break. Naturally, Donald Trump took this opportunity to say, "I told you so." How? By Twitter, of course. He said, "Mexico's biggest drug lord escapes from jail. Unbelievable corruption, and USA is paying the price. I told you so." He continued, "Can you envision Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton negotiating with El Chapo, the Mexican drug lord who escaped from prison? Trump, however, would kick his ass." El Chapo and the Mexican drug cartels used the border unimpeded like it was a vacuum cleaner, sucking drugs and death right into the U.S., end quote. Trump's flurry of tweets didn't go over too well with El Chapo himself because a Twitter account linked to him, which might actually be run by his son, replied with the following: "Keep effing around and I'm going to make you swallow your bitch words, you effing whitey melt bleeper." And I could explain to you what that means, but then I think we'd lose our very own Scott Ott. That's a rough approximation of the swear words that don't translate well. All right, so funny as the whole thing may be, this is also a direct threat, possibly from a drug cartel leader who undoubtedly controls thousands of loyal gang members, both in Mexico and in the United States. He's threatening a top political candidate. Trump has asked the FBI to investigate, but he may also be willing to escalate the situation. The LA Weekly reported last week, quote, "During a speech to a Hollywood conservative group, Friends of Abe, the GOP presidential candidate said Iraq was a needed buffer against a hostile Iran and that it was wrong for the United States to have invaded. Instead, Trump told the crowd we should have invaded Mexico." The remark was greeted with rousing applause, according to the source speaking to the LA Weekly. Mexico has offered a $3.8 million reward for Guzman's recapture, but during his escape, El Chapo is thought to have spent roughly $50 million in bribes, meaning he's outspending the government by a lot. And the last time he broke out of prison, he was on the lam for 13 years. So on one side, you got El Chapo, and then in the Mexican government, you have El Cheapo. 50 million versus 3.8. Doesn't make sense. Does the escape of Mexico's most wanted man prove Trump right about the corruption south of the border? And how seriously should we take El Chapo's threats against the Donald? To explore this question and much, much more, we turn to our pal from Dallas, Texas. He's an author and political satirist, Scott Ott. And here in Los Angeles, the man we call El Cruzo, stand-up comic, PJTV contributor, Stephen Cruiser.
This is my El
So
Guapo thing.
let's start with the obvious question. In Mexico, politicians, government officials, members of the clergy get assassinated all the time. It's just what happens. In the United States, fortunately, it happens very rarely. This threat against Donald Trump is something that we should take very seriously, in my opinion. Let's just play a hypothetical here for a second. If El Chapo is successful, if El Chapo actually follows through with his threats, and an American political candidate like Donald Trump is actually killed because of his political beliefs by a Mexican drug cartel leader, what happens?
The Democrats say win-win because that's the way they are. We know who they're. First, I want to express my outright shock at the fact that tunnels exist in Mexico which facilitate the transportation of criminals to places that they shouldn't be. I would have never have guessed that. Golly gee heck, who knew? But I think this is a legit thing, and you're dealing with two completely different kinds of government. As you said, in Mexico, corruption reigns. It's the way it is. It's the bribes, the payoffs, the criminals control things. It's always been the way it is down there.
But it's been contained in Mexico, though.
It's been contained
It
a
hasn't
bit.
spilled over.
Well, it's been contained in Mexico, yes. This is a God bless the social media era, because that's how we're finding out about all of this right now, because they're brazen enough to publicly say, I'm coming after you. That's how much they don't care. That's how much the drug cartels don't. They know they've got practically carte blanche over here right now, because most of the people dealing with border security and everything else are, once again, pretending that everybody over here is just nice hotel workers sending money back to Mexico, when it's actually these guys, and they do operate rather freely on this side of the border. And the reason, I think one of the only reasons it's been contained is because it's not good for their business model for them to go full-blown like they do in Mexico right now. So they keep it to a minimum.
All right, Scott, play with me with the hypothetical here. If this drug lord, and whenever a drug lord threatens you, if you're a private citizen, I think you should take it very seriously, because they kill a lot of people and they kill them in very brutal ways. Let's say it actually happens. What is the reaction in the United States? Do people say, well, it's Trump's fault for poking the bear, or do we finally seal the border?
I don't think, I mean, I think people will say the former. People will, blame Trump for his own demise. But I don't think it'll lead to sealing the border. At some point, you would think that the Secret Service would offer Mr. Trump some protection, but then we know how effective that can be. And El Chapo probably owns the prostitutes who are sleeping with the Secret Service agents. And, and this is the same Secret Service that has an absolute barrier between, what is it, like just the West Wing outer office and the Oval Office. That's where they stop people right there. If Trump is smart, he'll beef up his own personal security detail, which I'm sure he already has. But this kind of disdain for law and authority in Mexico, I don't think makes Trump's comments about invading Mexico beyond the pale. I mean, this is a clear and present danger on our own border, and it's not the people so much of Mexico. It's the sycophantic or sympathetic relationship between the government and the crime lords.
Is it now official that Mexico is a narco state? Because when you looked at El Chapo's tweets, one of the things that he said, besides the list of people that he's now going to kill, that he's out and back in charge, is that the government was with him on letting him out, that he did it with people that he paid off, and it took him $50 million. If the government is on the same side of El Chapo, or El Chapo is calling the shots and the government's just the conduit, the government's just the middleman that makes it happen, then the drug lords are running Mexico still.
Its busiest tourist city, Tijuana, had to shut down for a decade and a half because it was unsafe. There was tourism dropped by 95% there. There were tanks rolling through the streets because the drug trade had gotten so bad and it was so overrun with dangerous cartel people. So yes, it's institutionalized practically down there right now.
Can we trust the Mexican government on any possible level, Scott? Because eventually this guy will be caught again, although some people are saying he'll never be caught. He's been caught twice, so I believe he'll be caught a third time. If he's caught a third time, should we trust the Mexicans to keep him in their jails, or should we say, all right, we have warrants out for his arrest up here, it's our turn now?
No, I think we should send him to Yemen and see if they can keep him in jail. I mean, it's the same kind of thing, In Yemen, it just seems like every several weeks they're like, oh, all the major terrorists that we were detaining have escaped again. I don't think Mexico, from all external appearances, has a functioning security apparatus within their government. And even if there are elected officials who truly care, who truly seek justice, who truly care about security and the relationship with the United States, I don't think that they have the muscle to back that up. They don't have the ability to enforce that which they wish to reform. And by the way, the last I heard, El Chapo was on his way to the Palestinian territory because those Palestinian Hamas guys saw that tunnel and they said, that rocks, dude.
How insulting is this? Whenever we want to extradite a criminal from Mexico to the United States, sometimes they drag their feet or they refuse to do it because they say, we're not sending any prisoners to barbaric countries that have the death penalty or life in prison without the possibility of parole. You sentence someone to life in prison with the possibility of parole, and you keep them there. That's worse than the death penalty. Well, no, it's not. Not if you can't keep them in jail, particularly.
Yeah, the fact that they try to take the moral high ground it's very pompous on their parts. But I've said this for years, the biggest problem with our relationship with Mexico vis-a-vis criminals is the fact that leadership in America, Republican or Democrat, continually lets them get away with it. They get a pass all the time. Nobody presses them on this kind of stuff. Nobody in the upper echelons of the American government ever goes after Mexico on things like this. It doesn't matter what the party is. It's always, it's because of the oil, too. I mean, if we ever did invade Mexico, it would be the first time we actually invaded somebody for oil. It would finally be a war for oil, because they're our third biggest exporter, I think, right now. It's Canada, Saudi Arabia, and Mexico. And they get a pass. They've always gotten a pass, and this is one of the most frustrating things about the relationship. And anytime somebody's talking about border security, it's one of the biggest problems.
You know, Scott, it's impossible to look at a news article about El Chapo without them referencing his popularity among Mexicans. His popularity is not just high among Mexicans in Mexico. He's popular with Mexicans in the United States. How big of a problem is that for us, that a drug lord like this, a brutal murderer, a guy who's killed hundreds and hundreds of people, maybe thousands, is that popular with a huge growing part of our electorate?
It's a problem on a par with the popularity before his death of Osama bin Laden. Al-Qaeda was, building schools and hospitals and helping people on a local level with their ill-gotten gains. It's the same thing that's happening in the Palestinian territory. It's the same thing that, happened, or maybe still happening in New York City with the mafia. People get a sense of security and protection from extra-governmental organizations that the government itself can't provide. It's an ungovernable state, in essence, and I think that's a major problem for us. I don't know how you deal with it, except for our politicians saying, look, Mexico, whatever you're trying to do down there isn't working. You're a clear and present threat to our national security. Now, Mexico, by the way, will turn around and say El Chapo would not exist if not for the market that's provided in the United States of America for the drugs. And that is a valid point.
Yes.
We need to stop being junkies.
We need to stop being, we need to stop letting them have free export privileges, too. I mean, it's a two-way thing, yeah. We need to stop giving them something, but we need to make it harder to get, too.
All right, Stephen Cruz, you get the last word. That's all the time we have for today, but now it's your turn. Does El Chapo's escape prove Trump right? How seriously should we take threats against the Donald? Tell us what you think in the comments section below. I'm John Phillips. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.